Hello very much, everybody. Episode 2 of the Trent End Podcast. Myself, Louis Wilden, joined by Jamie Martin. Episode 2, long time in the making, of course. Episode 1 coming the week after the season ended. Episode 2 coming a couple of weeks before the season starts. We've had a nice break between the two episodes, but we are back, and it's not like we've got much to talk about. This could be quite a boring episode. Nottingham Forest haven't given us many topics to speak about recently. But I'm Louis Wilden. I was here on the first episode, and now joining me is my regular co-host, Jamie Martin. How are you, Jamie?
All good. It's good to be here. Obviously, my first episode doing it, so really looking forward to talking about Forest. And as you say, we've got nothing to talk about, so don't expect anything.
Yeah, no. It's been a very quiet few months, very quiet post and pre-season for Nottingham Forest. But yeah, so in today's episode, we're going to be trying to make sense or giving our opinion at the very minimum on everything that's kicked off regarding Nottingham Forest, and then having a look into some of the more pressing matters regarding transfers as well. So we'll start off and we'll have a look at these. We'll have a look at some of these transfers. I think one of the first bits of news that broke out was Elanga and Morgan Gibbs-White. Jamie, our first, well, two of our star players. One of them is gone officially, and one of them's off soon, more likely than not, pending a hilarious court case that we've brought against Tottenham Hotspur. We'll start off with Elanga. What are your thoughts on that sale? The fee that we've received, the gap that he leaves. Have we sold him to a rival? Everything in between?
I think anytime you sell to a Premier League team, because of how the Premier League can be, naturally, anyone can become a rival within a season. People that you were in a relegation battle with one year will be in Champions League battle the next year. It can just happen. And we saw that last season. I would say that with Elanga, it was a shame because Newcastle, we are strengthening someone that we are battling against naturally. And it's a good signing for them. I think that he's the profile of winger that they've needed for quite a while, even though credit to Jacob Murphy because he had a good season last year. But for me, the Elanga deal, I think was, as much as it is unfortunate, the right move. The question I ask people is, do you see Elanga at some point in the future selling for more than what we sold him for? Honestly. I would say that his ceiling is about that. I can't see Elanga, his potential being much more. And by the way, very good player, and he will do well in the Premier League. And he's still put up good numbers last season. Something like 10 assists, was it, in the Premier League? I can't remember. But the money we got for him is massive. I don't really know how much further we could have pushed it without them going, well, that's just ridiculous. I think they already paid a little bit over what really they should have for a player like Elanga. But, you know, he leaves with my best wishes. He did his part for us. He clearly wants to be at Newcastle. So just let him get on with it. What are you thinking with that?
I mean, I echo what you said about he leaves with best wishes, because I think with this sort of transfer, like an inter-Premier League transfer, and, you know, if we do regard Newcastle as now a rival, if we're aiming to be up there with them next season again, it can leave a little bit of a sour taste in the mouth at times. But honestly, I'm sad that he's gone. I'm very sad that he's gone. But again, the fee that we received for him, the fact that it doesn't really seem like all of the news reports. I saw John Percy, I think it was, saying, he's not pushed for this move in any particular sense. He wasn't like gagging to leave. He wasn't refusing to train or show up for pre-season or anything like that. Like he was more. I think if we never agreed a deal with Newcastle, and we never hammered out a fee that we were happy with, I don't think he would have had much of an issue staying at Forest for next season. So with that in mind, like I do wish him nothing but the absolute best going forward for his time at Newcastle for 36 games of the season. Obviously, I hope he has an absolute rotter every single time he plays against Forest from here in the future. But every other game, I hope he does really well. And I think Newcastle have got a perfect player for their system. You mentioned Jacob Murphy, of course, and he did do a wonderful job last season. But now that front three, assuming they keep hold of Isak, which is tetchy at best, the front three that they're going to be able to put forward is pretty frightening. Gordon, Isak, and Elanga as well. That's got a lot of pace, a lot of power. But it does leave a gap in our squad. Of course, we did mention wingers being a little bit thin from here and there. Obviously, Sosa's gone as well as Elanga, so that now has left us, now that he's gone, with two clear-cut wingers, and that's Hudson-Odoi, who's obviously brilliant and got no problems with him, and Jota Silva, who is decent, but yeah, maybe had a bit of inconsistency, maybe not a player that we're looking to rely on next season. So how do you replace a player like Anthony Elanga? Because his number one factor, his biggest attribute that was so important to our team and our counter-attacking system was his pace, how blisteringly quick he was, how much of a powerful direct runner he was. But you've seen pace merchants in the Premier League before. Elanga's a lot more than that, I think, in terms of like him as a technical footballer. He came on leaps and bounds ever since coming in from United 2 years ago. So I think he is going to be a bit of a tricky player to replace, which leaves us a bit of a problem. But one thing that I was happy about with the deal is it's £40 million profit from a player we only got 2 years ago. No matter how you spin it or how gutted you are, that is phenomenal business. And B, the deal happened really early in the window. We saw obviously for Johnson, for example, that stretched on for multiple transfer windows actually about whether he was going to stay or go with Brentford before Tottenham came in the year before he actually left. This Elanga deal has happened right at the start of the transfer window. It was a pretty quick, saga. I guess it was barely a saga. There was interest from Newcastle. They put a couple of bids in following interest last transfer window, and they got it over the line. And now he's gone. And now we've got pretty much the entire transfer window left to replace it. Well, maybe not the whole transfer window, but we've got or had a lot of time to replace him, which means that I'm not really as concerned about it, especially factoring in the amount of money that we got for him.
Yeah, I think with Elanga, it was always going to be at some point we were going to lose him, and I think that Newcastle put that bid in last year. Yes, definitely to try and see if they can get him at a desperate moment, but also partially probably just to unsettle him a little bit. We've all seen that William Asula played a big part. No doubt Alexander Isak played a big part. And from how we see him in the media, it did look like he really wanted to make that move. You can't blame him. Newcastle's it's a good team. He's been offered a different challenge. And what I think is really nice and refreshing to know is that he didn't push for the move. There was no, I know there's been rumours, of course, because there always is with absolutely everything, especially on the Forest timeline. But to know that he didn't push, it was just a respectful, quick moving. You've given us the money we asked for. You've done your part here. And that's football. At some point, we are going to lose these players. My concern, the biggest concern, was the players are part of a big spine. And that spine is what has kept this team going. But then if, on the flip side, if you remember how Elanga was for the last 6 months of the season before last and the first few months of last season, if someone had told me at that point, you're going to sell him for 55 million or however much it is with add-ons the year later, I would have said you're absolutely out of your mind. So there's so many different perspectives you can take it from, but I would say that Forest did the right business and they've come out better.
No, and I would agree with that. And it links on a little bit to our next point, you mentioning the spine of the team. And that is, of course, everything that's kicking off surrounding Morgan Gibbs-White at the moment, because I wasn't concerned about Elanga's sale. I thought he was a player, he might be quite tough to replace, finding an exact profile like him again. But the fee that we received for him was astronomically good, I think. The problem, I did then have a little bit of an issue with it, because then Gibbs-White's off. Potentially, the news broke a couple of days after Elanga was confirmed and Newcastle had announced him. All of a sudden, Morgan Gibbs-White's got a secret £60 million release clause that nobody in the media or nobody in the wider football world knew about, and he's going as well. And you go from Elanga, his sale is £40 million of profit, to Gibbs-White, which is, assuming we've paid all of the additional clauses now to make it up to a £40 million deal, you're losing Gibbs-White, who is very much the star of the team, to for a £20 million profit. You're losing him for what is, in this market, a pittance. And that then also concerned me of, well, if Elanga wasn't desperate to leave and we maybe could have held on to him if he was happy to stay, should there be no deal with Newcastle, then, okay, well, then why did we let him go to Newcastle if Gibbs-White had this release clause in his contract that I'm assuming Forest would have known about, but the rest of the Premier League and the media didn't know about? So why would we let go of Elanga if that was potentially hanging over Gibbs-White's head? So then that concerned me with Gibbs-White's transfer. And then obviously we're taking Tottenham to court all of a sudden 2 days after. It was Here We Go'd by Fabrizio Romano. Everything had broken out about there being a secret release clause. Forest, poor Nottingham Forest and the poor admin, they announce a beautiful new kit and no one gives a shit because everyone's in the replies flaming Forest about what on earth is going on with Morgan Gibbs-White. And it's just caused a fresh dose of chaos.
Yeah, and there never is a dull day, as we kind of alluded to at the start. There's literally never a dull day. And obviously with the time that I'm on at the moment, all these things are happening so late at night. So I'm looking at it at like 11 o'clock going, am I seeing that right? Waking up the next day and it's a completely new thing. It's like walking into a burning room. It's like those memes, you know. It is literally the craziest. That was the craziest, the kit announcement day, because Gibbs-White's in it. Like, I think Elanga may have been in it as well.
Yeah.
And they've removed that. There was the ice skating thing at the start, which just became completely irrelevant. So it was a really funny. I feel really bad for the person that videoed all that and put it all together, and they're just like, scrap it. We're just going to go with a 5-second long players laughing in a changing room video. But yeah, I think the time in between those two transfers hurt a lot. And then there was the money side of it, and you go, oh, hey, we're on a high. We just sold Elanga for this much money. Look at us. We've got spending power. And then Gibbs-White sells for, or was looking like he was going to sell for 60 million. And you go, no, we've been done there. And all of a sudden, all the positivity around the Elanga deal is out the window. You've got one right and you got one wrong. We're back to square one with that. I've got a couple of perspectives that I look at this Gibbs-White situation with, because there could be a genuine legal concern. Because would Forest have sold Elanga if they had known that a team was even interested in Gibbs-White properly? Or does that then kind of say to you, well, they didn't know that any team was going to come and trigger that release clause because they didn't think anyone knew about that release clause because it's been NDA'd and all these other legal things. So they're thinking, well, hold on, we've sold this player on goodwill that nobody knows about this release clause. If they want to make an offer, we can reject it or do whatever. And all of a sudden, we have no power, bar the payment, the structure of the payment for the release clause. So in that perspective, Forest could actually have a genuine legal concern. And in fairness, even though the purpose of a release clause is to be public, and in my opinion, it's a very, very strange and silly thing to rely upon for a big player like Gibbs-White. And that is a massive, massive piece of incompetence from the club. I don't like to really criticise Forest too much because I respect the things they do, but huge incompetence with that £60 million release clause. But at the same time, if it's been leaked and it shouldn't have been, and that's just the condition you can't be breaching. But I'm gutted to lose Gibbs-White because he's the 10. Everyone's jumping on the bandwagon, calling him a snake, calling this, calling that. We don't actually know the facts as to whether he's pushed for this move. Definitely, we don't know what his personal views on the situation are. You know, I'm sure he wanted to make that move, but honestly, could anyone blame him? People will say, yes, it's just Tottenham, and I get it. But the Tottenham project this year is very different to last year and the season before. It does seem to be that way every year. But I do think that they'll kick on with Thomas Frank personally. I think they'll do well. And it's a shame to lose him to Spurs, but they're playing Champions League football. He's going to get a pay rise. He's going to be in London. So many different factors. I can't really blame him all that much. As long as he leaves respectfully, then unfortunately, this is just a tough lesson that I think Forest will have to learn about release clauses, because anyone who spotted Gibbs-White and went, he's going to be a superstar one day, let's buy him, should have also gone, he's going to be a superstar one day, let's secure our investment and also secure future funds coming into the club when we eventually sell him, because Forest aren't in a position to be saying this player's going to stay with us for the rest of the time. So we need to start thinking about securing our investments and our assets.
I think as you touched on the legal side of things as well. Obviously I'm not a bloody lawyer and I don't know the ins and outs of everything that's gone on there. But on the surface, it seems to me that this release clause was not public knowledge. The defence from Tottenham is release clauses are meant to be public knowledge. Like there's meant to be a general understanding if a player has a release clause in their contract. But then there's also the side of, well, knowing Forest, is there some sort of loophole that they thought they found? Are they now on the side of any detail that's in a player's contract can be kept confidential by the club if they choose to do so? And then in that case, if it is just Forest, Gibbs-White, and his agent that are aware of this release clause, then Tottenham must have gone to Gibbs-White and his agent before us. Which even in the case of a release clause, I don't think you're allowed to do. I think it is common to talk to player agents before the club, but in terms of going to player agents and finding out details of contracts, I think that's a bit of a different ball game. And I think that's the defence that Forest are going to, well, not the defence, that's the charge that Forest are trying to argue their case against. So the ins and outs of it are terribly confusing. And what was initially meant to be, so it's obviously Sunday today. Gibbs-White was meant to go Friday before the one just gone. That's when his medical was meant to be at Tottenham, and obviously that hasn't happened. Gibbs-White is back in. He played in pre-season yesterday against Monaco, and he's back in pre-season training. And the whole thing just feels terribly confusing to me. I think Forest have a level of confidence that they're going to be able to keep Gibbs-White. Even with everything that's going around at the moment and this drama regarding the release clause, I think there is going to be a confidence there that they're going to be able to keep Gibbs-White, or at the very minimum, get a better fee than that out of it. They might refuse to sell him for. Are they allowed to do this? Refuse to sell him for the release clause price? I'm 99% sure they're not allowed to do that. But if Tottenham have found out about this release clause, it means that they're not allowed to do so by, then maybe Forest then have some sort of level of authority where they are able to charge more. Again, completely uneducated on this topic, if I'm being honest. I'm just speculating. But all of the drama that it's caused is absolutely chaotic to me. And as I mentioned before with Elanga, I think I said this a few weeks ago when it was all kicking off on Twitter. The thing I said about Gibbs-White is I would rather this not stretch out into this massive legal saga. If Gibbs-White is happy to make the move, which, fair play to him, I wouldn't expect him not to want the move. It's a Champions League football club, as you mentioned, all the thing, London, Champions League, pay rise, everything in between. Fair play if he wants to make that move to Tottenham. I personally don't think he's snaking the club or anything in between. It could be his agent more than it is him, for all we know. But I don't know. It's a drama-filled situation. I think initially I was saying, well, I'd rather not have this big legal saga. I'd rather him just go. Like if Gibbs-White is happy to go and there's a fee that sort of suits the club, and Gibbs-White sees that and it's like, yeah, sell me. I'm happy to go now. Then just let him go. Similar to with the Elanga situation, we sold him really early in the window and gave ourselves loads of time and loads of money to source a replacement and put that back into the squad. I'd rather it be a similar situation with Morgan Gibbs-White. If he's going to go, let him go. Use the rest of the window wisely and get him replaced. It's a ridiculously sticky situation. It's a very sticky situation. And it's going to be very interesting to see what goes on. I'll be honest, I wasn't really expecting Gibbs-White to return. I don't know why. I wasn't expecting him to return for training or to make any appearances in pre-season. Obviously, he wasn't in the squad against Chesterfield, but then he made his return pre-season wise yesterday against Monaco and played one of the halves. I don't know. It's one of the funniest, weirdest, most Nottingham Foresty situations that we've seen in many, many years. It goes to show no matter how far away you take us from the Championship, from Fawaz, from everything that happened around then, from 4-1 Stoke City and Nuno da Costa, no matter how far you take us away from that, we're still Nottingham Forest at our core. And that is in equal parts as frustrating as it is hilarious and heartwarming. That the true spirit of this club will never go away, and that is being fucking hilarious 9 times out of 10.
And you know what the best thing is? We're being hilarious and we're being Foresty in the Premier League and in Europe. So
yeah,
we can actually laugh at it and go, wow, I can enjoy this, rather than I cannot enjoy this. We're close to getting relegated.
You muted yourself, Jamie.
I've muted myself. Well, that's a great start. I didn't mean to click that. Yeah, but it's
technical
good that we
issues
can do that in Europe. So I hope you got the point. I don't know.
No, we did. I mean, and you speak of Europe, that brings us brilliantly on to the next point, and that is the next banter thing that Nottingham Forest have managed to put together, and that is everything surrounding Crystal Palace, the Europa League, Nottingham Forest, and the Conference League. My personal take, I don't really need to introduce this. Everyone knows what's going on. Everyone in the Premier League has had their say. I'd say 8/10 of the Premier League hate us, and some of them are in defence of us. And obviously, us at Nottingham Forest, we're very much defensive over what our personal part to play in this. My personal view on it is Crystal Palace have made the mistake. Crystal Palace made, or Steve Parish has made the mistake, whatever. If there was a correspondence that was set around for Crystal Palace to work on their ownership problems, that they're made aware of the rule, and they haven't adhered to that, and they haven't made the necessary changes the UEFA have already potentially warned them they will need to make. I don't think Marinakis going to UEFA and asking UEFA how this is personally going to impact Nottingham Forest, which is likely what he was talking about. I don't think we made that much of an impact, regardless of whether we complained to UEFA regarding it. I think it would have been the exact same outcome, regardless of what we do. And then you have Steve Parish, who's going on podcasts and saying, yes, I think this is Nottingham Forest's fault. Yes, I think Nottingham Forest had a big part to play in this. We really didn't. I genuinely think that if we had not done anything, if we hadn't gone to UEFA about anything, they still would have been kicked out of the Europa League had they not made the relevant changes that they were supposed to do with John Textor and everyone in between. The multi-club ownership rules are there. We went around them. Obviously, we didn't end up in the Champions League alongside Olympiacos in the end, but we went around them with the whole blind trust stuff that I still don't fully understand. But we adhered to it properly. If we had made it into the Champions League, we would have been allowed to compete alongside Olympiacos because we went by the rules. That didn't come to pass in the end anyway, so it doesn't matter. But Crystal Palace are not the only club that has been kicked out of Europe as a result of these rules. Drogheda United as well, in the League of Ireland, they've been kicked out of Europe because they won one of the Irish Cups last season. That would have allowed them to compete in, I think, the Conference League. But their owners also own a club from, can't remember which country it's from, but somewhere in Scandinavia. They own one of the Scandinavian clubs who is going to be in the Conference League as well. So Drogheda have been kicked out of Europe. Must have been Nottingham Forest's fault. That has to be our fault because we complained about it. That's obviously why they've been kicked out. Palace, appear to hold the opinion that this is completely our fault. We're absolute villains for trying to raise a point about this, about what does this mean for Forest, because it directly impacted our club, directly impacted everything we were planning to do this summer and potentially over the course of the season. Why would we not want to know about it? Why would we not want to ask UEFA, like, what the hell is going on? Like, how is this going to impact us as a club? And that's what I feel like has happened. But I don't know. Again, it's yet another sticky situation from Forest. What do you think about this?
Well, first of all, I want to start by saying that I actually had no problem with Crystal Palace before this whole debacle. I really liked the fact they won the FA Cup. I even said I think it was a win for football because one of the top six of the big six isn't winning it every year, and it's different. Palace has a lot of history, and they've always been around the mid-table, and they probably always will be. But they've got an FA Cup to show for it now, and credit to them. Steve Parish has built a very good, sustainable football club. Also, Dougie Freedman was a big part of that as well, so kind of liked it just for him. What a guy! But this has all gone completely the wrong way from a Crystal Palace fan perspective, because how on earth can you blame another club that has no implication over what the board does, what the board says, what the board communicates, or what emails they read? How on earth can you blame another club for your shortcomings? I.e., Forest didn't miss the emails and also decide that info@crystalpalace.co.uk or whichever was going to be the email that UEFA uses to discuss any MCO or multi-club ownership ruling. Number one. Number two, it's not our fault that you are in an ownership agreement with another person at the time, John Textor, who they claim had no influence, but he's still pumping finance into the club. In my opinion, that is influence because he's influencing several different departments by paying for them. Number three, I genuinely don't understand how they can't see, and there's conspiracies and all this about Forest and paying Leon and, paying money to Botafogo and it's going to Leon, and it's just conspiracies. I don't see how you can't see past the conspiracy and actually just look at your own club and see, hold on, Steve Parish genuinely didn't read certain emails and he's now on a complete PR campaign to go against Nottingham Forest. What football club that could potentially get more prize money and a higher standing in Europe wouldn't go and ask UEFA, what's the situation? Keep us in the loop. Who wouldn't do that? Because to me, if this was Palace on the flip side, they do the exact same thing, because football is a brutal game. It isn't a gentleman's game when it comes to the boardroom. And that is just how it works. If you like it or not, to be honest, that's not really what I'm about. I would like Palace to have played Europa League because based on merit, they deserved it. But now they've broken rules by UEFA, and that is just the rules. But then they say, well, hold on, Forest missed the deadline for the blind trust. Well, actually, Forest before this asked for an extension. UEFA granted it. We don't decide if we get an extension. This is a foreign governing body. If they said, no, you can't have that, well, then we'd be in a very different scenario, and we probably wouldn't be in the Europa League or another situation. I don't know. But we asked for an extension. They declared we had the grounds for it, and we got it. I don't really know what more you want Forest fans to argue with you about on that. And then there's the conspiracy again about Brazilian clubs, John Textor and Marinakis and all this. I just think personally, Palace fans are trying to find someone to blame other than the man that's leading their club. And while I respect the fact that Textor sold his, his part of the club, and he seems like a very interesting guy, he had influence. UEFA saw it. Everyone else saw it. He paid for things. And at the end of the day, Palace, while it's unfortunate you're not in the Europa League and we are, and whether the court, the arbitration of sport are going to overturn it, I don't know. But that is just football. Next time, get your house in order, because if you're late into the FA Cup, there's always a chance you're going to get into Europe and you're going to win the cup. So you should just get your stuff sorted out. That's not a Nottingham Forest problem. That's a Steel Parish problem.
No, definitely not. And I agree. And I did see, it seems like the majority of Crystal Palace fans, and again, I do actually still feel a degree of sympathy for Crystal Palace. So because quintessentially the rules are bullshit. Like they are crap rules, and if there was like a level of misunderstanding, yes, it's Crystal Palace's responsibility to understand them. But I still don't think that they're quintessentially fair. And then there is also the case of, well, Man United were allowed to compete alongside Nice in Europe not too long ago. You got Manchester City and their bajillion football clubs. They were allowed to compete alongside them. So I do think Crystal Palace, they have every single right to be upset. And in perfect truth, if roles were reversed and Crystal Palace had made a complaint to UEFA regarding us and our multi-club ownership, if we hadn't done it, I have a feeling that we wouldn't be too happy about Palace anyway. Doing that, so I can see why they'd be angry at us on the surface, but I feel like looking into it properly and looking at it completely, unbiasedly, you would probably understand. Well, yeah, of course, Forest are going to ask what is going on. Again, we are being speculative here because we don't know exactly the wording that was on whatever was sent to UEFA. But on the surface of it, it seems that we were asking what's going on, how will this impact Forest, and why would we not ask that? It impacts our entire season, this decision potentially. So why would we not want communication with UEFA regarding how this is supposed to impact us? That seems to be what it is. If we had never sent that letter of complaint, whatever it was, if we had never sent any sort of communication to UEFA regarding the situation, like I said before, I still have confidence that Palace would have been booted out of Europe if they still didn't adhere to those rules, as you say, or they missed the deadline to adhere to those rules at the bare minimum anyway. They likely still would have been kicked out of Europe, whether we had said anything about it or not, because other clubs have been kicked out of Europe as well. It's not like UEFA didn't know about this all of a sudden, because the investigation had been going on before we had made that letter. The news broke about it before we had ever sent any communication to UEFA. The investigation didn't start because we'd mentioned it. We didn't rat on them or anything like that, like a lot of Palace fans appeared to think we did. They were already under investigation for it, and they likely would have already been kicked out of Europe or kicked down to the Conference League at the bare minimum anyway. It wasn't our fault. It didn't have anywhere near as much to do with us as it did have to do with communications between UEFA and Steve Parish and the Crystal Palace board themselves. And then there was stuff about, as you said, if you go deep into the FA Cup, or you go deep into any competition where there's European football on the line, say if Crystal Palace, for example, were in our position and they were third for a portion of the Premier League season, it was looking very likely that in some capacity they would play in some form of Europe, then they probably would have paid attention and gone for it. So the rule should also still apply to the FA Cup there as well. They should have paid attention to the fact that they were going so deep in the FA Cup. They should have paid attention to the fact that a major trophy and continental qualification was on the line there, and they should have, checked the bloody emails and had a look around and seen, okay, well, is there anything we need to adhere to? Is there anything we need to get ready? And then made the prior adjustments there and then to prepare themselves for Europe and not end up in this situation. They were being investigated before we sent any communication at all to UEFA, as already breaking in the news that this was being looked into. And then we wanted to go direct to UEFA and say, what's happening? How does this impact Nottingham Forest? Because this will impact our entire season and potentially more seasons in the future as well. So, of course, when that news is breaking and that's the news of the day, of course we're going to ask about it from the source about how it'll impact us. We didn't have, whether we had any impact on it at all, it would have been a minute impact in comparison to all of the correspondence or lack thereof between UEFA and Steve Parish and the Crystal Palace board. So again, I can see why they're not happy with us, because any club, outside club, that would benefit from a bad situation going to the top and asking about it, on the surface level, you see a news headline saying Forest have complained about Crystal Palace and want them knocked out into Europe. Of course, there's going to be immediate uproar, but a bit of looking into it, I don't think we've done anything that wrong at all, personally. I don't know about you.
I just think it's sensationalism. I think the media dictate a lot of what we see and think about football. Forest's relationship with the media probably isn't as great as it should be. So therefore, the media are just going to go to town on them. What they could deem as a complaint, really, as we say, could just be a question or asking for clarification on a subject. And to be honest with you, like with Palace, again, I really like Palace. I like what they've got going on there. And I don't necessarily dislike them because a group of blokes who think wearing Stone Island makes them tough, shouting "fuck Marinakis" or whatever in front of Selhurst Park. That doesn't change my mind on the fact that I think that Crystal Palace is a good club. There's a lot of good people within it. And Steve Parish, before he's saying all these things, I would say was one of those people. But at the end of the day, the rules are the rules. And I don't recall anyone saying, oh, well, the rules aren't the rules when Forest broke the PSR thing last year. The rules were always the rules. And at the end of the day, we broke the PSR rules and we paid the price for it. We got 4 points deduction and it very almost relegated us. It was always rules were rules then. And even though we don't agree that PSR was fair in the way that it was, and I still think that there's a lot of flaws within PSR, especially for newly promoted clubs who really can't afford to not almost break the rules in order to stay up. No one else has stayed up since Forest did break those rules. So I think that was maybe a thing that should have sent a wider message to the Premier League about the rules. But they are what they are. And until they change, you can only go off that rule book. And there can't be any exceptions. That's the precedent that everyone has set with every other rule. And I do agree with you that, like Manchester United, like Man City, the other multiple club ownership scenarios, that there is definitely, it's unfair. They've found the loopholes. The loopholes haven't been closed, but Palace also could have used them. So while I do feel sympathy that the rules aren't fair, there was ways of navigating them that were completely applicable to Crystal Palace Football Club, and they didn't take them. And in my opinion, that's on their owners. Tough luck.
Yeah, and I think I agree. And again, just to repeat that, I do like Crystal Palace, and I was very, very happy for them winning the FA Cup, even if it was initially going to be at our expense, because then it made qualifying for the Europa League harder by not knocking it down a level towards us in terms of league standing. But yeah, no, in a brilliant situation, all of us can all get into the Champions League and all have a wonderful season, and all 20 Premier League teams win the Premier League at the end of the season. Wouldn't that be lovely? But as you say, this isn't on Forest. Our responsibility is Nottingham Forest, and knowing about how situations are going to impact us, and knowing what any outside situations that could impact us, knowing the breakdowns of those scenarios, and and what we need to do and what we need to prepare for. That is our priority number one, not whatever's going on in Crystal Palace's boardroom or whatever wasn't going on in Crystal Palace's boardroom in terms of outlook. But I don't know. It's another hilarious Nottingham Forest situation, as we've become very familiar with over the years. But in this situation, I really don't think we've done anything wrong. We were looking out for ourselves. That's what you're supposed to do. I don't think our correspondence with UEFA actually had any impact or any meaningful impact at all on whether Palace were booted out of the Europa League or not. It is what it is at the end of the day. I think Palace would do well to take ownership of the situation, or Steve Parish should do well to take ownership of the situation, and not just deflect blame away from himself and his boardroom and his colleagues, and actually take ownership of the fact of, like, yeah, we've made a grave mistake that has tarnished the club's biggest ever achievement. Which, it is the club's biggest ever achievement, and now it's gone incredibly sour because of backroom technicalities, and whether they're unfair or not, as you say, they're there to be understood. They're there to be navigated around. Palace could have, if they were in proper communication, or if we believe what we're led to believe through everything that's broken about the situation. If Palace did correspond properly and they were clued up, then they wouldn't be in this situation. They would keep their Europa League spot because there wouldn't be an issue. And then, I always think that everything in football should be decided on the pitch, but in the modern game, that just isn't the way it is anymore. If there were those loopholes and those legal issues and the MCO stuff that they had to navigate around, then they should have done it, and they should have been clued up, and they should have been prepared for it, and they weren't. That isn't Forest's fault. That isn't Forest's fault at all, because they were already being looked at before we ever sent any communication. And I don't think we would have made any impact at all by asking, okay, what does this mean for Forest, quintessentially. But I think good time to move away from all of the whirlwind stuff that goes on social media regarding Nottingham Forest, and we'll talk about some positive stuff, because it is still the transfer window after all. We are still in the transfer window, and during all of this storm, Forest announced a new signing in the middle of all of it, in the middle of the Gibbs-White storm and the kit reveal and everything. I think in the space of 3 days, Gibbs-White was apparently off for a secret release clause. We released a beautiful new kit. We've been moved into the Europa League, and Crystal Palace now hated us. Oh, and we've signed a new wonderful defender from Botafogo, who everyone is very, very excited about. Of course, talking about Jair Cunha, and then not only him, Igor Jesus has arrived at the club as well. 2 new signings this summer. Let's talk about them, because everything that I've seen of the two, obviously Igor Jesus went a bit global for scoring a winner against PSG, which isn't a simple thing to do in any sense of the word. And Jair Cunha is an incredibly well regarded player, coming over from Brazil, in a similar vein that I guess Murillo was as well. If Nathan Joyce is excited about 2 signings, then I'm excited about 2 signings, as how I view most Brazilian and South American things to do with Nottingham Forest. But what are your take on those deals, Jamie?
Yep. I haven't necessarily watched as much as the person you mentioned there, of both of them, but from what we have seen, mostly at the Club World Cup, if we've not been able to find any small games that we can watch back, is 2 very talented players in their own right. Brazilian teams took the Club World Cup by storm, but in particular Botafogo and Fluminense, really, wasn't it? And for Igor Jesus, the PSG match, probably the match that's most memorable. And he got 2 man of the matches in a row as well, at the very start of the tournament. So a really good start for him in a really tough group. So they did a really good job to make it out of that group. And for him, obviously getting a couple of goals as well, well taken goals. He showed his physicality. He showed a bit of a different profile to Chris Wood, in the fact that as much as he can hold off his man and kind of hold the ball up a little bit, he can also play off the shoulder. So he can kind of do a little bit of what Taiwo can do, a little bit of what Chris Wood can do. And again, he finishes it off with a wicked celebration. That in front of the Trent End, or in front of A Block, probably more so, will go absolutely insane. As for Jair Cunha, incredibly tall. I think he was 6'6" or something
6'6",
like that. I mean, if there was ever a back three moment, you could have Murillo, Milenkovic, and Jair Cunha, and that is terrifyingly good. Tall, but by no means he's not agile. Very good with his tackling. Obviously, he's got longer legs, so he can just kind of stab the ball in those really difficult situations. And then distribution-wise, you're looking like you're getting another defender that knows how to play the ball well as well. So, which, yes, is a need in modern football. But still, if you can get your hands on a well-priced defender, then you're good. And I think it was something like a combined fee of 30 million euros, which for two experienced younger players in the league that are both now tied to long contracts, that's really good business from Forest, I think. And 30 million euros, the risk compared to the money you've spent is just so little.
I agree. And then obviously it maybe begs the question slightly about what we're going to be doing with the centre back in regards to Jair Cunha. Obviously, it maybe begs the question about what's going to go on with the centre back department and maybe a tactical format, as you say, because our most common system defensively last year wasn't a five at the back; it was a flat four, or maybe not quite a flat four, but you know what I mean. So are we going to be seeing that more regularly? Because we've just tied down Willy Bolly to a new contract. Obviously, there's Murillo and Milenkovic as well. And then we've still got Morato as well hanging around in the background. And then we've added another centre-back into the mix too. Are we potentially looking at a formation change here? Is that the plan? Are we going to play Murillo, Cunha, Milenkovic, or Murillo, Milenkovic, Morato, or Bolly, I guess? It's a lot of centre-backs hanging around at the club at the moment. So is there going to be any movement in the market in that regard, or is there going to be a bit of movement maybe tactically at Nottingham Forest? Is Morato going to retain that backup role that he did well for the first 3 quarters of the season? Very, very well did that backup role phenomenally, and then maybe less so towards the end of the season. Is he sticking around? Are we still going to use him in that regard? I think the two transfers, well, the transfer of Cunha raises a couple of questions potentially about what shape we're going to go with or how we're going to be looking in the market in terms of comings and goings. Igor Jesus, on the other hand, very, very happy about his arrival because I think it was very obvious that we needed a new striker. Chris Wood is phenomenal, but he might not be able to keep up this level of form forever. He's kept it up for 2 years, which is pretty good going. But he is creeping through his 30s now. He's not going to be around at Nottingham Forest he's not going to be here at Nottingham Forest in 10 years' time. He's probably not going to be here on the pitch in 10 years' time. We need to look around at other options potentially for him to make way for. And then there is, of course, Taiwo Awoniyi, and his injury struggles have been very prominent for a while now. Of course, very, very happy after that horrible injury against Leicester that he's now back playing, of course. Played yesterday against Monaco, which is really, really good to see. To say that was an injury that could have potentially been fatal, I saw her breaking around. And he's back playing football in the space of a matter of months. I think that's pretty impressive. I still maintain if we can keep Awoniyi fully fit and get him to recapture his best days, then there's a very useful player in there for us. But if there isn't, and we move Awoniyi on or something like that, I don't know. I think we've got 3 strikers at the club now. We have a little bit of depth there. It was probably one of the areas, barring fullback, where we were struggling more than anything for depth last year. If Chris Wood Chris Wood had a knock at one point, he missed a couple of games. Then we had Awoniyi, and then he was injured as well because his fitness is probably the biggest concern over Awoniyi, generally speaking. I think now that we've added Igor Jesus into the mix, we do have a good level of depth. I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe looked into another option to go for in the striker department. Maybe somebody a bit more, somebody a bit quicker, a bit more nimble, slightly smaller, because we've got 3 big strikers now, big strong strikers. I'm not entirely sure. Again, it's going to be interesting to see what sort of system we come up with next year, because I think towards the back end of last season, our typical system, the counter-attacking system, it felt like it got found out a little bit more than it was towards the start of the season. We did really, really well. We won the majority of our games by having maybe no more than 30 to 40% of the ball, including against, I think, Brighton, the 7-0 win. We actually had less possession than Brighton, I want to say. Correct me if I'm wrong, which is hilarious to me to say we put 7 past them. But those counter-attacks, particularly with Elanga and Gibbs-White, the powerful runners of the team as well, were so important. But then as that started to get found out towards the end of the season, teams were saying, okay, well, we will just give them the ball then, and we'll let them have the ball. like Chelsea did at the City Ground, the final game of the season. We'll let them have the ball. They won't be able to do anything. And against Chelsea, we didn't for the most part, aside from a couple of chances that we managed to carve out. So I do wonder, are we going to look at a formation change? And then that makes me think, okay, well, if Gibbs-White goes, are we going to play with a 10 next season? Are we going to try and have that main creative output in the centre of the team, or are we going to go with a flatter midfield shape? And are we going to go, if Cunha has arrived and we have a massive centre backs at the club now, are we going to use more of them? Are we going to go for a 3? And then obviously Aina and Williams, can bomb forward a little bit more. I think it's very, very up in the air at the moment. I think the one thing that I say as an absolute is whatever Nuno Santo chooses to do, and I have absolute full faith in him. He's taken us this far already. I think last season he really, really well identified the areas of the team that needed work. Obviously, struggling with our set pieces so often. So we go and sign arguably the best aerial defender in Serie A for an absolute bargain as well. And Nikola Milenkovic, very, very rightly, in my opinion, crowned our player of the season last year. Transformative signing for our defence. And then key additions as well. Yeah, Elliot Anderson, obviously he's phenomenal as well. Very excited to see how much further he kicks on this year. If there is a change in terms of how we set up the personnel that we go with in our strongest team, then I'm interested to see it. But whatever it is, I'm very, very excited. I think I said on the first episode of this, our goal is to make sure, I think, that this season we've just enjoyed, our best season in 30 years, isn't a one-off, and that we can stay in and around that conversation rather than ever going down towards the bottom end of the Premier League again. And I think in Nuno Santo, we do have somebody who's going to proactively make the changes where needed to try and keep us in that discussion. He's been in this situation before with Wolverhampton Wanderers. Obviously, he took them out the Championship and then straight into Europe on multiple occasions. He knows what he's doing in these situations. He's a good manager who has the faith of the fan base. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing who else comes through the entrance at Forest. And then as we march on through the season, seeing what sort of shape we're picking up and how this will help us. But then on the subject of transfers, Jamie, we come towards the end of the episode, so we'll play maybe a bit of a game, I guess. But more of just a little, less serious, less Crystal Palace, what our whole situation. We'll do a bit of keep, buy, sell. So obviously, as I touched on before, episode 1 of this podcast came out the week after the season had ended, and we're doing the second episode at time of recording. It's the 20th of July, so creeping on towards the start of the season and pre-season well underway. So in front of me, I've got last season's Nottingham Forest squad, including all the players that were out on loan. And we're just going to go through and say whether we would keep them, buy them, or sell them. And if they have already been sold or loaned, then we'll say whether we think that we agree with that decision. So, are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
Okay, well, we'll start off with, I guess, a fairly easy one. Wayne Hennessy.
Go.
Yeah, and obviously it wasn't really much of our decision anyway because he's retired now. And technically he hasn't gone because he is back and he's a goalkeeper coach. So he is still in and around Nottingham Forest. Don't get me wrong, when he played on those few occasions, it wasn't anything special, but good number 3, loads of experience, and I hope he does well for us as a coach. Carlos Miguel.
Keep.
Yeah?
Keep, yeah.
I think I can agree with that. I mean, he's shown maybe a bit of shakiness on a couple of occasions when he played, potentially.
Our Exeter. That was the game where I was like, sell him. Other than that, I would say, like Newcastle in the Cup, I think he did a pretty good job. I would say that he's just a steady backup keeper for me.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that. And then I think it's pretty obvious answer. Sells.
Keep all day.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I need to discuss him. What a goalkeeper. Golden Glove winner, plays for Nottingham Forest in the Premier League. That is pretty incredible to say. If you'd have said that to me 5 years ago, then I would have punched you in the head. He's a phenomenal goalkeeper. Probably not that far. I don't know why I said that. Sells just he's incredible. Say all the problems we had with goalkeepers before his arrival with Turner and Vlacada Moss, and then Henderson's injury. We had a new one in Navas. Sells has been a breath of fresh air, and I'm very, very happy that we've got someone we can rely on in between the six now. Morato moving up through the defence.
Keep, but I would say that because at the end of the last season when he played a bit shaky,
Mm.
I'm not going to go too much off this pre-season because pre-season Nottingham Forest are awful, and I hate watching them. Same result against Chesterfield every single year. So yeah, I would say keep for now. But if he isn't at the level that he really should be next season, then I could see maybe a January sale.
Yeah, I think I could agree with that. So I'd say keep an eye on him is probably the fairest way of saying that, or the fucking stupidest way of saying that. Murillo,
Keep all day.
you like that? I'm assuming you said keep.
Keep, yeah, keep.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a gem. To say that he wasn't that much of a high-profile player, he'd only been a professional for a matter of months before we brought him in, and he took to the Premier League in his first season like he'd been there his entire career, and now he's going into his third season. I've not seen too much speculation about him maybe leaving. I know a lot of clubs are obviously interested in him. We've seen that paper talk a million times now, but I think he's definitely going to be a player that we dig our heels in over now that Elanga's gone and Gibbs-White will likely go. And I'm absolutely all for it because I love Murillo to pieces. He's such a unique centre back. Nikola Milenkovic.
Absolutely keep. Make him captain.
Yeah, absolutely. Keys to the city for Milenkovic. What a player. As I just said, transformative signing. Exactly the profile of player that fixed us. Willy Bolly.
Keep. I think he's good to have around. If we are looking to move tactic to like a 3-4-3, well, he played under Nuno at Wolves in that formation. So, and I do think that after this year ends, I don't know whether he'd stay playing. So maybe there's a coaching role available for him as well after that.
Yeah. Yeah, potentially. I mean, even if it's just for the sake of content on Ola Reina's Snapchat story, I'd be happy to keep him because he seems like he's it's quite an understated thing in football having an experienced head who maybe isn't on the pitch every single week, but having an experienced head behind the scenes who's good for camaraderie. It's an understatedly important aspect to a football team, and I think Willy Bolly fits that perfectly. So yeah, I agree. Keep Zach Abbott.
Keep. I think he's going to play a role in the first team this season a lot more. We've seen him kind of being pushed out to right back a lot, which is interesting. So I do wonder whether maybe Nuno is setting the precedent for him becoming either a more defensive fullback or potentially to be looking at the right-sided centre back, sort of if they wanted to go for a three at the back. So definitely keep him around.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure actually. I was going to say loan for Zach Abbott. I think it's the first one we've not had the same opinion on. I think potentially a loan. I think he has got absolutely bags of potential. I'm very excited about him. To make your it was his second club start in an FA Cup semi-final at Wembley against Manchester City of all people, and he didn't look out of place at all. And I thought actually played really well until injury took him off. That does speak a lot about the quality of play you've got there. He's only 19 years old. I'm very, very excited about him. And I think maybe if he can cope with Man City at Wembley, he probably could cope with the Premier League. But if we're not quite willing to take that gamble, a top end championship loan might be a good idea. But then there is also the case of, well, maybe we are looking at him as a right back rather than a centre back. He obviously played that role at Wembley. And then if we're looking at young centre backs, well, we've got Tyler Binden, who's already out on loan, and we're very, very excited about him as well. Reading fans have absolutely waxed lyrical about him. So if we are looking at him as a right back, that would make sense if we're looking at Binden as the centre back of the future. So my personal opinion is loan potentially, but if he did stay around, I don't think I'd have any complaints.
Could save money, by the way, as well, by keeping
Well, yeah,
him. Money
yeah, no, that's very true. If he can step up and play a role, then yeah, absolutely. It saves us having to fork out for a new backup right back. Because if we did bring in a right back, it would probably be for backup purposes. Ola Aina.
Keep all day.
Absolutely agree. Don't need to expand on that really. Nico Williams.
Keep all day again.
Absolutely. Eric Da Silva Moreira.
I'd like to see him stay because of depth for me. And I still think that there's got to be a time where he can break out. I would like to see him get more cup appearances because when we played Newcastle in the cup, I actually thought he was really good that game. And then we just didn't really see anything of him again. So I would still like to see him get a chance. So I'd keep for at least another season.
Yeah, I think I could agree with that. I am also again going to say loan here for Maria, but I think it might be if again looking at Abbott if he's a right back and then Maria as a right back as well.
Yeah.
If we are going to keep one of them around for depth purposes, I think it's more likely we keep Abbott for homegrown nation shit for Europe as well. So I think one of the two will go out on loan. Maybe we won't see both of them go out on loan potentially, but I think for both of their developments, a loan would probably be the right idea because if we weren't willing to play De Silva Moreira last season after some really encouraging cup performances, then I can't see us being too willing to play in this year. But then there is also the question of Conference League. Like, are some of our more squad players or younger players going to get more opportunities by playing in the Conference League? That fixture congestion is making the squad as big as possible with players that aren't going to take up a registration
Did
squad
you mean
in the
Europa
Premier
League?
League.
Sorry. Did you mean Europa League?
The Europa League, thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry, Steve. Sorry, Steve Parrish.
Try email him, but no one.
I'll email him my apologies because I know he won't read them. But yeah, I think both could be good squad options, but I also think maybe a year out on loan would be more beneficial to the pair of them. He's of course already gone, but Alex Moreno, would you have re-signed him?
No.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that. I think start of the season he locked up Mohamed Salah at Anfield, and he did put in some phenomenal performances at times during the season. But I think if we did ever play him in that flat four, then he didn't really have much for us. He's 32 years old now. Are we going to be interested in bringing him in permanently for whatever fee he might command? If we weren't hugely convinced by him as a starter last year, if he can come in cheap as a backup option, purely to play a backup role like he did for the majority of last season, I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't be like, oh God, why have we signed Alex Moreno? But I'm not like desperate to bring him back, I don't think. So I would also say no, don't re-sign. Harry Toffolo.
No. Done his part. Did that goal line clearance against Spurs. Good man, but he was on borrowed time after that Chelsea, after we conceded against Chelsea, and he let Reece James make that run for me.
Fair. I mean, Toffolo, what an amazing bloke. I think it's the first thing. I don't think I've ever seen a squad player leave a football club to as much emotion from the fans. Like I think he played no more than 5 times last season, I'm pretty sure. But we were all pretty gutted that he'd gone because as an ambassador for the city for mental health as well, what an incredible bloke he was. So he leaves with everyone's absolute best wishes. I think on a football side of things, everyone's like, yeah, probably the right decision. But just on a personal side, absolutely gutted to see Toffolo go. But we are looking at this from a football argument, and so in that case, I would say, yeah, go. Moving into the midfield, then Ibrahim Sangare.
Keep. I think if he can get a consistent run of game time, could be a real asset. So I'd definitely like to see him stay. And talking to Chelsea again, had he had stayed on the pitch against Chelsea the last game of the season, it could have been potentially a different result. But yeah, keep him along.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we are still waiting for that proper moment for Sangare to crack on since he came in for obviously all of the Brennan Johnson money. We were all really excited when he arrived. Very high profile player in the Eredivisie who they were very excited about or very appreciative of. We're still waiting for that proper. We're still waiting for the penny to drop. But I do think if we can keep him fit, I really do. I was really encouraged by him towards the end of last season when he finally got that opportunity to be our starter. I think he could have a really big role next season. So I'm excited about him. I thought he was quality towards the end of last season. So absolutely keep for me. Another absolute here, Elliot Anderson.
Yep, no question.
Yep, absolutely no shadow of a doubt. What a phenomenal player he is. And I think he'll probably have an even bigger standing this season. Obviously, with Elanga and Gibbs-White, who maybe soaked up a bit more of a few more of the plaudits than him last season. I think Elliot Anderson will really start to come through as one of an absolute stars in the wider media as well now next season. He's not gone yet, but he likely will. Morgan Gibbs-White.
Given the fact that he accepted the move and all the noise around it, I'd rather it just be over. So for me, I think we should part ways, and I think we should sell.
Yeah, I think I'm obviously I've already said what you just said there earlier on this episode, and yeah, I would rather it be over and done with. If he's going to go, just let him go and give ourselves more time and more money, I guess, as well to go about replacing him. Ignoring all of the noise and going into the transfer window before anything had happened, absolutely keep. But if he is to go, then let him go, and yeah, we'll get over it. We'll figure out a replacement, and we'll just go from there. It's rather to just rip the plaster off. Nicholas Dominguez.
Keep. Yep, I would keep. I think he's a very solid option in the midfield. Yeah, keep him.
Yeah, and I agree. He's obviously on his day. He is such an incredibly hard-working midfielder, who I'm very appreciative of personally. I think ever since he's arrived, we've seen a few really quality moments from him, and I think he's a wonderful player to have in the team. So yeah, I absolutely agree. Ryan Yates.
Keep. Next question.
Yeah, absolutely. He is the heart and soul of this football club, and everything that we were, and everything that we are. And I actually said this the other day. Seeing Newcastle fans' response to Sean Longstaff being sold to Leeds, a player who wasn't exactly the star of the team, but represented the area, localish boy, and everything in between. They were gutted that he left, and it's made me realise, shit. Like, even if we're in the Champions League and Yates will only play like twice a season, I'm going to be absolutely heartbroken if he ever leaves. He's already gone, but Danilo, do you think that was the right decision?
Unfortunately, I think the ankle break ruined him. It was so weird because we signed him as a defensive midfielder, but it always looked like his talent was higher up the pitch. But there was too much talent higher up the pitch in terms of Morgan Gibbs-White to really play him there. So really gutted that he's left because he gave us some really good memories, and he'll always be remembered as like that first season, that goal against I think it was Southampton. I think just phenomenal.
Yeah,
Great guy. But that game at Wembley was when I was like, I'm sorry, but he's not good enough anymore. The game at Wembley against Man City, he didn't have the focus, he didn't have the speed to pass it, just giving away the ball so much, and it just kept happening. So he's just not ready for this now. And I think, unfortunately, that ankle break has ruined him a bit.
yeah, and again, going back to the first episode, a few weeks ago now, I had him down as our most underwhelming player of the season, but I did stress that it was through absolutely no fault of his own. It's because we know how good Danilo was before that injury and how important it was going to be important for us. He started our first game of the season, and then obviously that ended within minutes, essentially. And then yeah, I think that was absolutely the beginning of the end, because from that point onwards he looked a shell of the player he was. He didn't have that confidence and the drive to properly apply himself, hinging off of that injury. So yeah, I am sad that he's gone and that it hasn't eventually worked out. He is only 24, so I do think that he can still come back, wherever it may be. It just won't be with us, and I do absolutely hope that he does, because again, if he can get back to those best days elsewhere and with nothing to do with Forest, so that he will never score against us or anything like that, absolutely, I'll be thrilled for him. But I think as of right now, especially the fee that we got for him as well, because it seems like it's a decent fee. Yeah, I think Sell was the right choice. Taiwo Awoniyi.
Sell. I like Taiwo, but it seems like every season now, other than that first season, we're always coming back going, if he just stays fit this season, I reckon there's a good player there still. Unfortunately, I don't think we are a charity, and the end of the season last year was brutal for him, and I'm just glad that he's here. Like he said, I'm glad that he's alive. And to be honest with you, had that affected him more than it did permanently, I would hope that Forest would support him for as long as they can. Keep him on the books, do what you can. But given that he's fit and he's kind of ready to play again, I would rather assign an even younger striker, someone that's going to be an understudy, so that when Chris Wood, leaves in a year or two, Igor Jesus has someone there ready. Because I just don't really see Taiwo recapturing that form, I'll be honest, which is a shame. But I just don't see him doing it.
No, and I agree. I'm also on the sell side. And again, it comes with a big tinge of sadness, because I don't think any of us are going to forget anytime soon how important Taiwo Awoniyi was for us staying up in that first year. His goal scoring run that he went on was phenomenal. And he's a player that I think we'll always appreciate in the fan base for everything he did. But it's just injury after injury after injury. The best ability is availability, to use the old cliche. And yeah, I do think those injuries have just absolutely worn him down to a certain degree. If he does ever go, or if he goes in this window, he'll go with my absolute best wishes. But again, as a football club now, with where we're aiming to be, I don't think we can rely on a 1 year if he is to come into the team, which guts me to say, because we know that there is a quality player in there at his core. But I think those injuries are just going to stop that from coming out again in a red shirt. Chris Wood.
Yep, keep, no doubt.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, best ever Premier League season coming at the age of 33 is pretty phenomenal. I don't think he's got a huge amount of years left in him, potentially, given his age. But if he can keep up even half of that form next season, then I'm pretty happy. I think, I don't think there's much else to say about Chris Wood, and what a bloke he is as well. Callum Hudson-Odoi.
Keep all day. Yeah, I think he's going to benefit from Elanga and Gibbs-White not being there and having so much of the limelight. Obviously, I still think that, for me, Hudson-Odoi needs to get his numbers up. People were suggesting him for an England call-up a while back, and I didn't really see why he should get one, personally. I don't think I wouldn't be happy for Hudson-Odoi to be in an England shirt at the moment. I just don't think he gets enough numbers. However, he scores in big games, and he's scored big goals for Forest. So he is a game changer, and I would like to see him stay for that reason.
Yeah, I think in terms of profile, he's a really important man. He was an absolute bargain for us as well. I mean, 3, 4, 5 million, whatever it was, in his first season, the amount of goals he got for us, and then last season, the importance of the goals that he scored for us, can't be like, I'd pay that fee 10 times over out of my own pocket for Hudson-Odoi at Forest, and be grateful for the generational debt that it will bring me. Because I love him. I think his profile is perfect for us. Again, I do agree. Yeah, maybe the numbers coming up will be good. But Hudson-Odoi, absolute keep for me. Jota Silva.
Keep for the sake of depth, really. I think if we sold him now, it's another winger we've got to go out and get. Every kid wants to be a winger. Every football club needs wingers at the moment, and they're all bloody expensive. So let's just keep Jota Silva. He actually got quite a few goals last season, and he scored some important goals as well. So I know that people will have a go at him for being a bit erratic and the rest of it. I still think that there's a depth option there.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that. I mean, he's only 25 years old at the end of the day. He's going to be 26 by the time the season starts, but ignore that. And yeah, he might not be the prettiest player in terms of a football aspect. But again, in terms of depth, I don't think he did, on the whole, a terrible job coming off the bench last season. I think he did have an okay impact here and there. There were times where he came off the bench and he didn't have a good impact at all, or sometimes when he was in the starting team, sometimes not brilliant. But again, in terms of a depth option, I think we could probably do better than Jota Silva, but we could also do far, far, far worse than Jota Silva as well. I just can't be asked to play Manchester City, and if they play Jack Grealish or something like that, then that's going to do my head in, seeing all those stupid memes about their haircuts again. Or if we sign Jack Grealish, as I saw was linked with a couple of weeks ago, that's going to be hilarious. Final two players have already gone. So we'll start off Ramon Sosa.
He's just not at the standard. He didn't get a run of games, to be fair to him. He probably didn't get as much of a chance. However, Nuno does see him 5-6 days a week and will have judged whether he's good enough or not. And to be completely honest with you, people that say, he still had potential, he's 26, right? Like, I don't know how much more potential you think he's got. He's 26. It's like that old Lingard thing. It's all right. He's young. He's fine. He's 30, mate. Like, he's on 80 grand a week. Like, this is not a joke. We made the right decision, and to get 10 million or whatever it was for Sosa, return on your investment. Personally, I think we made the right call.
And I'm also in the same boat. I think sell was the right decision. I actually am in that boat that I would have liked him to get. I would have liked him to get a bit more of a run of games in the team, because there were a couple of flashes that showed he had something about him. If that goal had gone in, if that shot had gone in against West Ham when he came off the bench, then who knows? He probably would have been our starting winger forever, for all we know. But that's football. It's a funny old game at the end of the day. And yeah, as you say, I think we did get a really good fee for him, and it seemed pretty obvious that Nuno Santo wasn't hugely fussed on him. And if that was the case, and he had no plans for him, then yeah, the best thing is to do is to get as much money as you can for him, and let him kick his career on elsewhere if it isn't going to happen with us. And then Anthony Elanga.
I didn't want to sell him on the face of it, but if the money was right, like it was, then then sell. Very good player, suited our system a lot. It's going to be a bit of a headache for Nuno because you will not get a player faster than Elanga. Can guarantee it. It's probably one of the fastest players in world football. So it's a shame, but got the right money. So yeah, sell's the right decision in that case.
Yeah, and I said it, but he's incredibly quick, but far more than just a pace merchant as well. I think he was a really important player for us. It's going to be a bit of a wrench replacing him now, but we've got the money and the time to do so, and I do have absolute faith in Forest doing it. We were worried about Johnson. If we were going to replace him, we replaced him with Elanga. We're now worried about Elanga. I still have confidence that we're going to make the right choice with whoever it is that comes in to replace him. So yeah, I'm on your side there, I think, as well. So then, very, very quickly, I don't think we need to explain these ones too much. Some of the players that are out on loan. So Marko Stamenic.
So
I agree. Sell. Jonathan Panzo, already gone, but
yeah, sell.
Sell. Lewis O'Brien.
Sell.
Sell. Omar Richards.
We've got so much dead wood. Sell.
Omar Richards, if we now that we figured out that he is once again a real person, sell. David Carmo.
Sell. We don't.
I'm not sure of him, to be fair. He was actually, from everything that I read, he was actually really good at Olympiacos last season. So keep an eye on him in pre-season.
The problem is that we don't want to just stockpile. We've already got Morato as depth. We've already got Jair Cunha. And we've got Bolly. Even with a back three, I still think that would be excessive. In my opinion, I just think that it's all good being good at Olympiacos and doing that. That's fine. But I don't think that. I think they needed his depth more than we do. I don't think it'll benefit either party if he stays.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. But yeah, Carmo, not a hugely convinced answer from me, but yeah, maybe I'd lean on sell given that. Bowler.
The GOAT. We need a winger. Sell, please.
Yes, absolutely sell for Bowler for me as well. And I feel so bad for him because we really wanted him when we were in the Championship and he would have been a phenomenal signing at the time. We got him when we came up into the Premier League. He's still yet to play a competitive game for us and we've absolutely spoiled his career. I feel personally really bad for Josh Bowler.
Welcome to Forest.
Welcome to Nottingham Forest. Welcome to the Nottingham Forest meat grinder. Matt Turner.
Sell.
All day. Release. Whatever. Just sell. Yeah, get rid. Andrew Omobamidele.
I actually wasn't wanting to sell him because I at one point thought that he would be like, something special for Forest. That game against Liverpool at home was phenomenal for him. Even when we lost, he was amazing. But I don't think it ended too well because we didn't get any goodbye message or anything. It was just, I'm in France, I'm staying here. That's that. So, based on what he's saying, I would probably say sell.
But yeah, and it seems like there wasn't really much of an intention to keep him based on the messaging, I guess. He didn't leave with much fanfare. I thought there was a player in there ever since that debut. It was only against Blackpool, but he was really good ever since his debut. Anytime that we saw him, I thought he did a good job in red. There wasn't really much of a plan for him. That's why he went out on loan in the first place. So yeah, if he was going to go, then sell. But personally, I would have been interested to see if there was anything further for him. On this list, I've got Josh Bowler twice because he went out on loan twice. So I won't repeat that. Tyler Binden.
Keep all day. Good loan for him at Sheffield United. Top Championship team. Should do him good.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely keep. Obviously, it would make no sense to say so because we've only just brought him in. But yeah, absolutely keep. And I'm very excited about him if everything that Reading fans have said about him comes to be true. And Emmanuel Dennis.
Sell. Just sell. Please, Forest, just sell. There's so many players that you just need to get off your books. Terminate the contracts, man.
I've not paid a huge deal of attention. Has Dennis played a minute for us yet in pre-season?
I don't think he has, no.
Okay, good, because there is always like I worry about Dennis playing in pre-season, having an okay performance once, twice, and then a couple of us start to be like, maybe Dennis has a little chance here. Like, because I've been on that side as well, but this time I'm very resolute.
Every year.
I'm absolutely resolute this time. Please sell Emmanuel Dennis, because he's not going to kick a ball in a Forest shirt again, I don't think. And then looking through the rest of this, that is pretty much everyone. So that then brings us to the end, Jamie, of episode 2 of the Trent End Podcast. If you've been listening, thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure once again coming and presenting this show. I'm sure the next time that we present this show, whenever that may be, Forest would have done something hilarious for us to break down over the course of an hour, and I absolutely look forward to doing that. So, Jamie, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Take care of yourselves. Have a fantastic week, and can't wait to get our encyclopedia of all crazy Forest rumours and doings for the next episode.
Yeah, I'm absolutely buzzing for all of the massive transfer rumours that are going to come our way, and we'll be back at some point in the next couple of weeks, I imagine, to break down whatever it is the Nottingham Forest have done next. But for now, from me and Jamie and the wider team of the Trent End Podcast, that is everything. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day. Is what I'm told.